Okay, we are back. Another series in this journey. If you haven't watched the intro, these are kind of in order, so I want to encourage you to go back, watch the intro. We're talking about a smaller congregation, 125 people on a Sunday morning in Auburn, Alabama, and kind of the consulting process that I went through helping them with some governance issues. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, go back, look at those videos. But today, I'm going to be talking about collecting and analyzing data. And one of the key people I want to bring up today is Peter Block. You'll see his information listed on the resource page. Also, his website's got some great stuff you can print out as well. And in this idea of collecting and analyzing data, he has this discovery model for problem solving. So it starts off with presenting a problem, read definition of the problem, clear and simple picture of what's happening, and then from that clear and simple picture of what's happening, you either have kind of a technical / business problem going on, or how the problem is being managed, and then the consultant's going to navigate those, talk about those, and provide some recommendations to the client. And so for me, it was interesting because as I'm collecting data, so church is 125 people, the board itself is 12 people currently, and so that's close to 10% of the congregation right there in one room. The first meeting I had with them didn't have every single board member there, but even just getting feedback from the board, that's a pretty large percentage of an organization. And so I had that group meeting with the board, talked with them, and then afterwards I was able to go through and do some individual interviews with different board members. Most of those pretty successful, some weren't. You can go back if you watch the previous video on dealing with resistance. You'll meet two people that were a little resistant to it. But the interviews were kind of fruitful, and then on top of that, I did some congregational interviews, and these were kind of short, brief ones done after a Sunday morning service that I went up and aligned with a couple different people and talked to them about board issues. So it was more of a qualitative method, going through and interviewing these people, and then kind of analyzing the data I was going through, and looking for themes, of course, repeating themes, and different issues that I saw. So I didn't use the GRIP model. GRIP model is one of the more popular models in consulting, where you go through and talk about kind of goals, roles, processes, and then interpersonal relationships. And so, but for me, it was interesting because I was very interested, not so much in the goals and roles, although some of them had a little bit to do with that different, the board as itself, its role and how it's supposed to function. But we weren't exactly looking at that. And so I wanted to know about kind of the procedures and then the interpersonal relationships. So I'm interested in those things because that's going to tell me, hey, is this a technical problem? Is it a problem with your bylaws? Or is it going to be a problem with personnel, right? So you have board members who are kind of butting heads, and because of that, it looks like, hey, the structure is messed up, but it's not really the structure. It's really this idea with interpersonal relationships between board members or congregation members and the board or whatever, or even the CEO and the chairman of the board, or in this case, the senior pastor and the board chairperson. So those were some things that I looked at in the idea of collecting and analyzing the data. And then my goal, going through and looking at this, they present the problem, so I'm going through, I'm kind of redefining the problem, listening to them, and then repeating it back, but also trying to frame it in an issue that better for me to understand. And then my goal is to help develop a clear and simple picture of that situation. And so, when you talk about board governance for nonprofits or even churches, you have a ton of these resources and different approaches. This is governance as leadership. This is corporate boards that create value, and that's kind of a different governance approach, policy approach, that a lot of it's run through policies and kind of nested bowl policies that help guide the management, the day-to-day management from the church board leadership. The board book, kind of a standard book by Bowen, and then community governance, a framework for building healthy Christian organizations. And so there's a lot of expertise, a lot of information here, a lot of different diagrams and different things. But my goal wasn't to read these 5 books with them. My goal was to go through and to present a clear and simple picture of the situation. And so I use kind of the expertise knowledge, but it's filtered down and used and discussed with the individual board members and some of my questions to them. So when I go through and do that, I'm not giving them exact precise language that I would use in terms of the CEO board relationship and all this type of stuff, but really talking about their pastor and individuals in the church and how the governance is working. So I tried to do that, tried to present a clear, simple picture of the situation. And then we looked at it again and kind of talking about that and analyzing the data. Is this a technical problem? Is this how the problem is being managed? And so far in my discovery process and my analysis, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, there are some major kind of technical aspects of it. So their bylaws, their policies are kind of preventing good governance from happening, easy governance from happening, where they're kind of making it more difficult on themselves, and the structure is doing that, not so much people. And it's interesting because you can have really good people in a poor structure and it can function nice, and you can have some really terrible people in a great structure and they can still wreck an organization. So you want to kind of have the best of both worlds would be to have a good structure and good people. And for them, I think they have, the majority of the people are good people, dedicated people. Some of them need kind of continuing education, learning on what a board does and how it does. But I'm trying to, that's a little bit outside my boundaries that I'm looking at. So maybe that's something at the end I'll talk to them about, as far as, maybe some education for their board, or maybe like a retreat and talking about what boards do, what's a good board member does. Is it just an oversight position and you look for mistakes, and if something's fishy you probe for questions, or is it something that you're more participating in, more active in helping to partner with the senior pastor and the governance of the organization? So anyhow, but that's collecting and analyzing data. Love to hear from you guys. Be sure to shoot me an email, or you can leave a comment below. So hope everyone's having a great day. I will talk with you guys later.